Hey, EDUC 225. This is your last lecture, lecture number 8 for communication and disorders. We are going to jump in today in the children with communicative disorders, and we're going to specifically talk about your teen today that you will see in your schools. So, like in the past, what I've said in other courses is that you are an expert on what children can do at what specific ages. So, if you teach third grade, you're an expert on third grade and you're an expert on that specific child, but you are not an expert on all of these communicative disorders, on disabilities that the student might have. And so, you use all of your resources around you to help you with that. With that being said, this is typically going to be the team that you're working with in your school. So you're the collaborator of the team, and that only happens in some schools. Sometimes the social worker or the special education teacher is the collaborator, and you are the eyes, the ears, the advocate of the child. Okay. You also have the speech language pathologist. That person diagnoses the type of communicative disorder and is involved in establishing the intervention plan, and they consult to the teacher. And so this speech language pathologist typically will be working in the school building. They are most of the time not a school district employee, though. They work with a different entity, but that company will house speech language pathologists in elementary schools. Most of the time they're about 2 days a week, and they hop around from different schools. But their expertise is on this part of speech. So if you ask them questions, that's an okay thing. That's something that you should be doing. But they are going to be an expert on different disorders, and then how to establish a plan, how to help the child. Their counselor and social worker will be there as well. They provide support to the family and access to additional resources. A lot of times in elementary schools, you will have a counselor and a social worker there, and they just kind of do different things. A lot of times the counselor is in the school, and they know the child really, really well, and they know the family. Let's say you're a fourth grade teacher. The counselor knows kind of every kid really, really well, and so they're going to be able to say, I remember when your brother came through a couple years ago, that sibling also had, something very similar to this. The social worker is going to be like the SLP, and so they are hired by most of the time someone outside of the district, and they are probably also going to hop around the school to different schools, and they're not going to be in your school 5 days a week. But again, they are supporting the family. They know about counseling programs, additional resources in the community, and they can steer the families toward those. The audiologist determines children's hearing levels and needed hearing aid devices. This person is not going to be in the meeting with you, but they will have a report sent to the school, and a lot of times the parent themselves bring the audiologist's report with them, and you read it and see what the person says. But most of the time, the audiologist and this word that I can never say, this medical doctor, the next one in the middle, bottom row, they aren't there. They just send messages when needed. So that bottom middle one, whatever that, I can't even say it. As a medical doctor specializing in surgical or other medical treatments related to speech and hearing. So you won't see either one of these doctors in your meetings, but again, they will send files and information as needed. That second one, you're also not going to really deal with that unless it's something extremely serious. Your interpreter is a specialist skilled in communicating through sign language. Through all of my 10 years in a classroom, I never had an interpreter for sign language. And so that might be something you see. If so, I'm sure it's probably going to be a one-on-one, which means it's that person's with the child 5 days a week, the whole entire school day, and they're assigned to just one child. Okay, so that's the team approach. That's something that I think first year teachers are really scared of. They think they have to know everything. Not at all. Remember, you know your grade level, you know what a child's capable of doing, and you know what is age appropriate for that child. Everything else, there's someone that specializes in that. Okay, so let's talk about specifically how we hear, because the input of language that we have coming into our brains is a huge part of what we can audibly reproduce. And so this is a video. It is How We Hear. It's from Study Jams, which is actually a website that we use with children to learn from. It's a great website for kids. You have to register and pay for some things, but this particular one is free. I want you to watch this quick little video, and just like normal, I want you to take notes in your notebook. I want you to tell me 2 facts that you learned, and again, it's in the module for this specific course, and it's called How We Hear. So pause this, go listen to it, and then come back to me. Okay, so we have 3 types of hearing loss that I need for you to understand. And again, this is something that is very foreign to me, because it's not something that I specifically specialize in either. And so I'm going to explain them in my verbiage, and then also I'm going to send you and watch videos. So let's talk about the first 2. Conductive hearing loss has to do with the eardrum. The transmission of sound vibrations is disrupted in that, and that is how children cannot hear everything that's happening, because something happened to that transmission, the sound vibrations. Something happened there, and that's where the hearing loss happens. Your sensory urinal hearing loss, it has to do with the inner ear and the connections to the auditory nerve. So even deeper inside your ear, and that's where the break happens and why certain children can't hear. And then congenital hearing loss, that's identified during early infancy. It's present at birth, and it may be due to genetics or prenatal conditions, and I know the video there talks a little bit about that. I will say, before you leave the hospital, they do a hearing test on your infants. Now, sometimes they can do a hearing test and something happens in between that hearing test and when we start to see some lack of verbalization, and sometimes the hearing tests just don't do their job. But what I want you to do is you're going to watch 2 videos in the module back on Canvas. The first one is titled Types of Hearing Loss, and then the next one is titled Congenital Hearing Loss. Watch both of those and give me facts that you've learned out of both of those in your notes. Pause this and then come back to me. Okay. So there are a bunch of behavioral signs that, as educators, that we can pick up on. If you are working in a daycare or a preschool or even with elementary kiddos, there are some things that can happen that can give us a good clue. Now, with that being said, I would never pick up on any of these things and then run straight to the parent and say, I think your child is showing signs of hearing loss. Okay, I would not go about it at that process at all. I would meet with your team, those team of people that we originally talked about on the very first slide. Get their opinion, pull that team together, and let you as a team discuss what you've seen, and then how to proceed from there. So, 3 different behavioral signs: lack of response to sounds or speech. Now, I think this is probably the easiest one, especially in little kids. If something falls and makes a big noise, if everybody kind of shudders or jumps and this child has no response. If their back is turned to you and there's a funny sound, or you're playing music and they have no idea, that is a lack of response to that sounds or the speech. Lack of response when name is called. Sometimes kids can just completely be in their own world. And so I don't think this one is as big of an indicator. I call my children's names all the time and they never answer me. So this one is maybe not the best sign. The last one is misunderstands directions or conversations. If you are just simply giving out directions or simple verbal tasks and you are only using speech to communicate and the child is always messing it up or getting it wrong or being confused, that could be because they're not hearing it well enough. That's why it's always good to get in the habit of when you're speaking, and if you're talking about get out your pencil, you hold up a pencil, and get out your English book, you hold up an English book, and then you make a visual for everything. I got into a really good habit of that when I was working with special ed kids. They didn't have hearing losses, but they had a processing issue, and so if they were able to see what I was talking about, it helped them make those connections a little bit more. So some techniques to use in class to help with students of hearing loss. You can speak to the child in close proximity. That's always nice anyways. If you're talking to a specific child, get down on their level, squat down so you are eye to eye and you are all up in their personal space talking to them. Now if you're giving out group directions and a child is having a tough time with their hearing, stand by them when you give out the directions. Or even if you are saying, I want you to get out XYZ, use their stuff. Okay, Jordan, can I have your pencil? Everybody needs a pencil, and you're helping them get through that. Use gestures like we were talking about. Point to things. Have visuals. Speak distinctly. This is difficult for me. I speak very quickly, and sometimes I mumble. Sometimes I think quicker than I speak. So make sure that you are speaking very clearly. And allow ample response time. If it's going to take them a little bit longer to understand what you were saying, it doesn't mean that they're cognitively slow. It means that they are hearing a little bit slower, and they have to figure out what you said first before they can start to comprehend what you've actually said. Okay, so from this, there are some communicative disorders that we're going to talk about. Things that you know, that you need to know, I promise. I wish I could give you some winks here. This fact, please memorize. 10% of all students in elementary school have a communicative disorder. So if you have 30 kids in your class, that's 3 kids in your class that is most likely going to have a communicative disorder. That's a lot of kids. Difficulty of acquiring language stemming from problems of receptive language. Okay, so this communicative disorder could fall into the area of receiving hearing language or the production of language, if that is through a cognitive issue, through how their mouths are formed, tongue-tied, cleft lip, cleft palate. Remember we talked about all that? Or it could be a combination of both. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple of disorders that we have here. We have articulation disorder, fluency disorders including stuttering, a cognitive impairment, and specific language impairment and delayed language impairment. So if you're looking at those, I want you to think about the first star is group number 1. Fluency disorders, group number 2. Cognitive impairment, group number 3. Specific language impairment, group number 4. We're going to break these down, and I'm going to put you in groups. You should have been put in groups before you listen to this. Lecture. But in your groups, I want you to do your Canvas observation. I believe your Canvas observation is to find one website that is based on whichever one of these disorders that you've been assigned. Find some facts off of those. Comment just on your partner's comment, and then when you come to class, in class, you are going to work on creating a presentation with your partner over your assigned topic, and you're going to include the description of your disorder, the causes of it, what that means for us as classroom teachers, so the application piece there, and then our teacher's role. What can we do to help with this disorder? You are going to create some type of visual. It says there poster, but I would rather it just be some type of media form. And then a worksheet that you are going to create and have it be kind of a graphic organizer for your peers as you go over these things. Again, this is going to be done in class when I see you on Thursday afternoon. So don't stress about it, but you should come to class with that discussion already done. So you've already read the chapter and you've already found a website with some facts. So you should have plenty of resources to help you with this. In class, we're just working on kind of pulling all of that information together. I will see you guys tomorrow.